God is all-knowing, all-loving, and all-healing. And so we pray for His touch of grace on the whole family of this child that was lost. Okay, we are in the middle of creation. And this is, I was thinking last night, before God stepped in and started creating, everything was chaos. Everything was chaos. It was dark, it was mixed up, it had no form, no shape, no reason, and it was just chaotic. And that is the way I was feeling. Before God steps in, I think we are all in darkness. Won't tell you the whole story, but we have had some challenges in the last 2 weeks that are very stressful, not life-threatening, I don't think, but they are very stressful. And we have half of our house cordoned off, visqueen tape all over several rooms that we can't go in. A giant dehumidifier and fan that picks up spores in the air running 24 hours a day for the last 10, 12 days. And it makes a freight train noise. So if that doesn't, if that doesn't do it, nothing much will. But this is because, I don't, I may be repeating it. Did I tell you that we had a mushroom garden in our dining room ceiling? No. If I didn't, that's where it started. I walked in the dining room, looked up, and there was a little fleck of paint, a little peeling of the paint on the ceiling. And I said, I've never seen that before. No color, discoloration, just a little flake. And so I said, well, there must be pipes up there, so I will call the plumber and see if he can tell me what is causing that flaking. Called the plumber, he came, he had to cut the ceiling out to find out, but he called me in there and said, see, and I saw a giant toadstool, like this. Beautiful. And I said, well, bring it down, I'll cook it. No, that's not the kind you eat. But you have an infestation of mushrooms, and this house is 50 years old. It's never had any leakage or anything in this, and that's just, but it's about time something leaked or something dripped, and so that was the issue. But they had to get up there and replace a length of pipe, and of course they have to dry it out, and they have to detoxify all of the spores of the what they called it mold. I called it mushrooms. That sounds better, but anyway, it's still running, and there's no getting away from it. It's just of a freight train running through your house all the time. But anyway, it will be soon finished, and we'll replace our ceiling, and we'll go on about our business. But I said chaos is where, as I've started to read the Sunday School lesson, I realized that in the beginning, everything was chaos. There was no form, no shape, no anything until God stepped in and made order of it and created it. And then the creation story kind of took hold of the rest of the week, and I love the story, and I love what the implications for my life. In fact, I will recommend Bible study to cure all of the chaos that you've ever had. It really does. The Word enters into your spirit, and it creates order out of what did not make any sense before. So that's where we are today. We're in the middle of creation, and I'm amazed again when I look outside, when I see the world that we live in, the beautiful part of it and some of the mushroomy parts of it. I think, wow, God must be mighty and all-powerful to have put this together. I was trying to make a recipe up for one of the services. I for me to get in the kitchen, particularly with the house and the shape it's in, and to get everything out that it takes to make a cake or brownies or cookies or anything that I am used to making, I have to get everything out and get it ready and sift it and measure it and it just takes a long time to do. That's why things that are homemade are so good, because it takes a long time to do it, I guess. But I have 100 different things, and I pile the sink up with stuff, implements, things I need. And then I look out at on the side yard where the trees are growing over a creek, and where the grass is so green because we've had all this rain, and it is a beautiful scene of the natural world. And I think God did this without a sifter, without a spatula, without an oven, without anything. He did not have any equipment at all. He just stepped out and said, let it be. And that is how mighty and how powerful He is. So there's nothing in my life that is out of order or in disarray or shapeless or formless that He cannot fix, that He cannot create anew. And so I'm very comforted as I read this lesson. We're in the middle of creation, and it is, I just have to pause and say, we've already seen light separated from the three great separations. Light separated from darkness. You know, God stepped out into the midst of darkness, and He said, let there be light. And we don't know what, but it was light. There was no sun, no moon, no stars, no GE, no nothing. But God said, let there be light, and there was light. And this light is more than just what helps us to see. This is enlightenment. God speaks, and we are able to see things spiritually as well as physically. And so the light that He created was not just the light for our eyes, but the light for our spiritual being that was yet to be created. But He said, let there be light, and there was light. That was the first great separation. The second one was the water from the water. Separate the water from the water. It sounds like to me, as we read the Genesis story, the earth is a great ball, and it's sitting in a tub. It's got water in the tub and water above the tub, and there is bobbling around. But there was water above the earth and water below the earth, and God separated the waters so that we had the water above and the water below. And that was the second great separation. That was in preparation for the third great. He separated the water from the dry land. And now we're beginning to see His recipe. He is preparing His creation to receive living beings. He's creating, out of the darkness, He created the light. He touched the earth with the seasons right. He created patterns for life and light. All that is made is of God. So He is creating a foundation for the life that is to come and the life that is to support creatures in His image for whatever period of time He has determined, or whatever period of eternity that He has to determine. So we have those three great separations, and today we have the first indication of what the earth is going to look like. God's made it, got the ingredients all together, and now He's ready for it to come into being. And our scripture is from Genesis 1:14 through 25. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark the times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And he also made the stars. You ever gone out on a starry night and looked up and tried to count the stars? It is a magnificent sight. Well, if you ever looked up at a full moon or a half moon or a quarter moon on a clear night, that is, a magnificent sight too. And you can't really look at the sun, but you sure do know when it's shining and when it's not. So there's just the majesty and the magnitude of this creation points to an all-powerful, almighty, all-creative God. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth. So we're getting into the earth story now. It's a recipe he's got here to make the earth. Not everything else. There are a lot of other things out there, but he's going to concentrate now on the earth. God set the lights in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, and it was the fourth day. So we are now just past the half mark of creation. And God said, let the waters be filled with living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. And God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and increase in number and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning of the fifth day. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and all of the creatures that move along the earth according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. And so everything, and we can stop and contemplate on every aspect of that creation and think, this is what supports our life. This is where it was created really, or being prepared for the coming of creatures in the image of God. So it is, again, a magnificent and wonderful story. I think I know most of the Genesis stories because that's the stock curriculum for Bible school, is the Genesis stories, because this is where God is introduced to the very youngest of our members, our church, our children, learn about the power and might of God from hearing these wonderful stories. And this is one, where did all this come from? And we've got an answer, we've got a story to tell. So it's a beautiful story. This is not a scientific story. The Bible is telling a story of faith, and it's a far greater story than anybody else could imagine. So remember, as we look at it, this is a faith story, and there is no place. Everything in this universe we know of has a cause. We live in a cause and effect universe. Nothing happens without a cause. There is no cause without an effect. So that is where it is. And the one flaw, or the greatest flaw, in the scientific version of the story of the creation, or the story of the earth and the evolution of things, is that goes all back to a big bang. And the question is never answered. What's the cause? what caused the Big Bang? So the evolutionary story, as fascinating as that can be, and as much sense as change and adaptation and the workings together of the living creatures and the earth that they live on, and how they interact and move and change and adapt. That's a good story too. That's a cause and effect. But it started with, let there be light. Let there be light. And that was spoken by God. And so it is the faith story that we are living, being creatures of God on the earth because he said so. Because he said, let there be light, and let there be, and it was so. Okay, so it's a wonderful story when we get to creation, and I did not want to make make it a contest between what science tells us and what the story of the Bible tells us, because the faith story is our story, and it is the only one that produces a cause and an effect and a sustaining reason for being. The only thing that creates a thinking, responsive creature who recognizes that this is a cause and effect, and that we just didn't pop out of the woods. So, good story. It's amazing how the authors of the Genesis story, the author of the Genesis story is supposed to be Moses. He was the one that I think the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, are attributed to, called the books of Moses. But it is amazing how erudite, how educated his account of the creation is, and how thorough it is. And we're looking at people that didn't have any equipment either. They didn't have any telescopes, and they didn't have any rockets, and they didn't have any spaceships, and they didn't have any way to do anything except look up and observe what was observable in their surroundings. And this is an amazing story, an amazing place. We are now, I said we have gotten to 5 days, and we have seen that in 5 days he's separated everything, he's got it all ready, and the land is dry, and the creatures are about to inhabit the earth. And I'm floundering a little bit because I left my outline at home. I started out, again, everything is in disarray. There's no place to put anything, so it gets stuffed under, it's on a chair, under a pillow. Some other things that are all over the earth. And so I picked up my Bible, and I had my Bible, and I picked up my God's Trombones, and I'm glad I did, because I'm going to read the creation story again, even though we have heard it before. It is, this is our hometown author, James Weldon Johnson, and it is the creation story the way nobody else tells it. I will put the Genesis account ahead of it, but this is a close second to what's in the Genesis account. And this is called the creation. And this is part of my lesson. And God stepped out on space, and he looked around, and he said, I'm lonely. I believe I'll make me a world. And as far as the eye of God could see, darkness covered everything, blacker than 100 midnights down in the cypress swamp. And then God smiled, and the light broke, and the darkness rolled up on one side, and the light stood shining on the other side. And God said, "That's good." Then God reached out and took the light in his hands, and God rolled up the light in his hands until he made the sun. And he set that sun a-blazing in the heavens. And the light that was left over from making the sun, he gathered it up into a shining ball and flung it against the darkness, spangling the night with the moon and the stars. And then down between the darkness and the light, God hurled the world. And God said, "That's good." Then God himself stepped down, and the sun was on his right hand, and the moon was on his left, and the stars were clustered about his head, and the earth was under his feet. And God walked, and where he trod, his footsteps hollowed the valleys out and bulged the mountains up. Then he stopped and he looked, and he saw that the earth was hot and barren. And so God stepped over to the edge of the world, and he spat out the 7 seas. And he batted his eye, and the lightning flashed, and he clapped his hands, and the thunders rolled, and the waters above the earth came down. The cooling waters came down. And the green grass sprouted, and the little red flowers blossomed, and the pine tree pointed its finger to the sky, and the oak spread his arms out, and the lakes cuddled down in the hollows of the ground, and the rivers ran down to the sea. And God smiled again, and the rainbow appeared and curled itself around his shoulder. Then God raised his arm and waved his hands over the sea and over the land, and he said, "Bring forth, bring forth." And quicker than God could drop his hands, fishes and fowls and beasts and birds swam the rivers and the seas, roamed the forests and the woods, and split the air with their wings. And God said, "That's good." Then God walked around, and God looked around on all that he had made. He looked at his sun, and he looked at his moon, and he looked at his little stars, and he looked at his world with all the living things. And God said, "I'm lonely still." Then God sat down on the side of a hill where he could think. By a deep, wide river, he sat down with his head in his hands. And he thought, till he thought, "I think I'll make me a man." So up from the bed of the river, God scooped up the clay, and by the bank of the river, he kneeled him down, and there the great God Almighty, who lit the sun and fixed it in the sky, who flung the stars to the farmost corner of the night, who rounded the earth in the middle of his hands, this great God, like a mammy bending over her baby, kneeled down in the dust, toiling over a lump of clay, till he shaped it in his own image. Then into it he breathed the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Amen and amen. James Weldon Johnson. St. Thomas. St. Thomas. Pardon? Oh, okay. Sainted one.
What?
You're
My
While
assistant
she's
is
doing
behind.
that, I was delayed by a phone call from a representative who's working with Mason's family for Thursday night. And I know a little more than we knew 45 minutes ago. If you would like, you may bring him. He was very fond of superheroes, and they're collecting superheroes that evening that will be donated to possibly Wolfson's Children's Hospital or some organization, if you care to do that. Our part is going to be to provide the drinks and the hot dogs. And they're going to have, I think, mac and cheese and a donut, something there. He loved all the things he loved, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful way of honoring him. And so if you have cookies and want to bring them, we're going to put those out. We're going to have the hot dogs, and we anticipate a full house. It was compared to your dear husbands, the people who were here for that. And we are expecting a full house, probably 500 to 600 people. So if you want to come and help us, we can probably use that as well.
Marilyn, our class also elected to donate $100 in memory of Mason.
That's awesome. Nancy whispered to me when I slipped in. Thank y'all.
Okay.
So what time do we
Are
come
they
to
gonna
help?
let me up there?
What time do you come to help? The service is at 6, so I would say if you're here at between 4:30 and 5 o'clock.
Are
No,
you ready?
We're ready.
not
Oh.
We don't have our helper here. Where is she today?
Oh, is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, gosh. I'll never hear the end of that part of it. My goal for 2018 was to lose 10 pounds. I now only have 15 more to go. I ate salad for dinner, mostly croutons and tomatoes, really just one big crown covered with tomato sauce and cheese. Fine, it was a pizza. I ate a pizza. How to prepare for tofu. Throw it in the trash and grill some meat. I did just a week's worth of cardio after walking into a spider web. I don't mean to brag, but I finished with a 14-day diet food in 3 hours and 20 minutes. A recent study was found that when women carry a little extra weight, live longer than the men who mention it. Kids today don't know how easy they have it. When I was young, I had to talk through 9 feet of shag carpet to change the TV channel. Senility has been smooth transition for me. Remember back when we were kids, and every time it was below 0 outside, they closed school? Nah, me neither. I may not be funny or athletic or good looking, smart or talented. I forgot where I was going with this. Where did I lose that thing? Remember back when we were kids and every time it was below 0 outside, they closed the school? No, me either. It may not be funny or athletic or good looking or smart or talented. I forgot where I was going with this. I love being over 65. I learn something new every day and I forget 5 others. A thief broke into my house last night. He started searching for money, so I woke up and searched with him. I think I just put an out of order sticker on my forehead and called it a day. November 24th, 2018 is the end of daylight savings time. I hope you didn't forget to set your bathroom scale back 10 pounds for Saturday night. Just remember, once you're over the hill, you begin to pick up steam.
We'll all stand and we'll be dismissed.
Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight,